The wheels of the military transport bus screeched softly as it came to a stop on the familiar street. Sergeant Daniel Carter pressed his forehead to the cold glass of the window, his heart pounding harder than it had during any battle. This wasn't the battlefield anymore, it was home. And waiting at the end of this road was the one reason he had endured the endless nights, the long marches, and the lonely silences of deployment: his 8-year-old daughter, Emily. He stepped off the bus with his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his boots crunching on the pavement. Everything looked the same. The quiet rows of houses, the distant hum of cars, the smell of freshly cut grass in the summer air. But inside Daniel, everything was different. He had counted every day since he'd last seen his little girl. He had folded her crayon, drawn letters into the pocket of his uniform, reading them again and again when the war zone grew unbearable. He had lived for this moment. Her laughter, her hugs, her sweet voice calling, "Daddy, you're home." His chest tightened as his lighted on the small white house with blue shutters at the corner of the street. That was it. His home. His sanctuary. He imagined Emily waiting at the window, maybe holding the stuffed rabbit he had given her before he left. He pictured her running down the porch steps, her hair flying, her little arms flung open to embrace him. But as Daniel walked up the path, reality struck him with a subtle but sharp difference. There was no little girl running toward him. The porch was empty. The curtains in the window fluttered slightly, but no face peeked out. He paused at the bottom of the steps, suddenly uneasy. He had faced ambushes, explosions, and nights under enemy fire. But this silence unnerved him in a way nothing else ever had. Taking a deep breath, he climbed the steps and knocked softly. The door creaked open, and there she was, Emily. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but she didn't scream with joy like he had imagined. She didn't run into his arms. Instead, she stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the sleeve of her faded pink sweater with small, trembling fingers. Daniel's smile wavered as he bent down to her height. "Hey, sweetheart, it's me. Daddy's home." His voice cracked despite effort to sound cheerful. For a moment Emily didn't move. Her big brown eyes shimmered, torn between joy and something else. Something Daniel couldn't quite place. Then, finally, she stepped forward, hesitantly as though unsure if it was really him. When she wrapped her little arms around his neck, Daniel held her tightly, inhaling the scent of her hair, whispering, "I missed you so much, baby girl." His heart swelled with relief. But then, just as quickly it sank. Because as he held her, he felt it. The fragile bones of her arms under his hands. And something else. Something rough and uneven under the fabric of her sleeve. Something was wrong. And though he tried to bury the thought for that one precious moment, a soldier's instinct told him the truth. This homecoming would not be the joyful reunion he had dreamed of. It was the beginning of a battle he had never prepared for. Daniel didn't let go of Emily right away. He wanted to memorize the feel of her in his arms, the way her tiny heartbeat fluttered against his chest. But as he held her, the uneasiness grew stronger. His hands brushed against her arm. And there it was again, an irregular texture beneath the soft cotton of her sweater. Not the smoothness of skin he remembered kissing before bedtime, but raised ridges. He pulled back gently, just enough to look at her face. "Sweetheart," he whispered, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded quickly, too quickly, her gaze darting to the floor. She forced a small smile. The kind that was meant to reassure him, but Daniel knew his daughter. He had faced interrogations and stared into the eyes of liars, but never had dishonesty hurt like this. Seeing his little girl hide something from him. "Let me see your arms, baby," he said softly, trying not to sound commanding. He extended his hand, palm open, a soldier-turned-father pleading instead of ordering. Emily shook her head, clutching the sleeves of her sweater tighter. Her lower lip trembled. "It's nothing, Daddy, really." That word, nothing, stabbed at him. He had used it himself so many times during deployment. Telling fellow soldiers he was fine when shrapnel still ached in his side or when nightmares stole his sleep. But he was a grown man. Emily was just 8. She shouldn't have to hide behind that word. Daniel said more firmly now, his throat tight. "Please, let Daddy see." Hesitantly, as though every movement carried the weight of a secret she desperately wanted to keep, Emily loosened her grip on the sweater's cuff. She tugged the sleeve upward. Daniel's breath caught. There, across the delicate skin of her forearm, were angry red marks. Some were faded, like they had been healing for days, while others were fresh, raw against her pale skin. The sight of them hit him harder than any bullet ever could. For a moment, Daniel froze. His training had taught him how to act fast under fire, how to stay calm when chaos reigned. But nothing in the military had ever prepared him for this. Seeing evidence of pain etched into the body of his little girl, his mind spun wildly. Was it an accident? Was she being bullied? Or was it something far darker? Something that had happened in the very place that was supposed to protect her while he was away. Emily. His voice cracked. He tried to keep his composure, but emotion surged through him, hot and unstoppable. Who did this to you? Tears filled her eyes instantly. She yanked her sleeve back down, shaking her head furiously. No one, Daddy, it's nothing, I just fell, that's all, please don't be mad. Mad, the word pierced him. He wasn't angry at her, he was furious at himself. Furious for being gone, for leaving her in someone else's care, for not being here to protect her from whatever caused those marks. He cupped her small face in his calloused hands and kissed her forehead. I could never be mad at you, Angel, never. But I need you to tell me the truth, please. Emily buried her face against his chest, her tiny shoulders trembling. She didn't answer. She couldn't, or wouldn't. And Daniel knew then that the truth wasn't going to come easily. Whoever had caused those marks had also planted fear inside his daughter. Fear so deep that she couldn't speak of it. As he held her, one vow blazed inside his heart: I will find out who hurt her. And I will never let it happen again. Daniel spent the rest of the evening pretending everything was normal. He ate dinner with Emily, listened to her halting stories about school, and tucked her into bed with the same bedtime prayer they had always whispered together. But inside, he was burning. Every time her sleeve slid back and he glimpsed the faint outline of those marks, his jaw tightened. He forced himself to kiss her forehead gently, smile, and whisper, Daddy's home now. When she drifted off, clutching her stuffed rabbit, Daniel sat in the dark living room, fists clenched, his mind replaying the image of her arms again and again. He had faced enemies on foreign soil, but now his battlefield was right here, inside his own home. And he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the truth. The next morning, he started with the obvious question. Who had been watching her while he was gone? His sister, Claire, had been living nearby and promised to check in daily. Emily's grandmother had also stayed over a few nights a week. But neither of them had been a full-time guardian. During most days, Emily had been with Mrs. Harper, the woman who ran the small daycare down the street, and had offered to look after her. Daniel clenched his teeth at the thought. He didn't know Mrs. Harper well. She was polite when they met before deployment. But polite smiles didn't prove safety. First, he called Claire. Danny, I swear I didn't notice anything unusual. His sister said over the phone, her voice tight with guilt. I stopped by every evening after work. She seemed quiet sometimes, but I thought it was just because she missed you. Kids get shy, you know. I never saw the marks. You never saw them because she was hiding them. Daniel muttered. His tone was harsher than he meant, but Claire didn't argue. Next, he spoke to his mother. I thought she was fine, son, she said, wringing her hands when he stopped by her house. She smiled, she laughed, she ate well. But when I suggested she wear short sleeves because of the heat, she said she was cold. I didn't think. Her eyes welled with tears. I didn't think something was wrong. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. It's not your fault, Mom. I just need to know what happened. Later that day, he walked Emily to school, his eyes scanning everything. The way she flinched when a group of older boys ran past. The way she walked slightly behind him, instead of skipping ahead like she used to. At the school office, he asked to speak with her teacher, Miss Reynolds. She's a bright girl, the teacher said kindly, but quieter than before. A few months ago, she stopped raising her hand in class. Sometimes she seems tired, or distracted. I assume she was adjusting to you being away. Daniel nodded slowly, though his heart sank. Everyone seemed to have seen pieces of the puzzle, yet no one had put them together. Has she ever mentioned being hurt? He pressed. The teacher hesitated. She never said anything directly, But once, during art class, she drew a picture of a little girl behind bars. When I asked what it meant, she crumpled it up and said, "It's just a game." I thought it was her imagination. Daniel's fists clenched. That wasn't imagination. That was fear bleeding onto paper. That night, when Emily was asleep again, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table, the house silent around him. His mind replayed every conversation, the excuses, the gaps, the whispers of neglect. And beneath it all, one name echoed louder and louder: Mrs. Harper. She was the one who had spent the most time with Emily. She was the one Emily's eyes seemed to avoid mentioning. Daniel's military instincts surged to the surface. He had learned to recognize patterns, to see the hidden enemy, to know when silence was more dangerous than words. And now every instinct screamed at him the answer was with Mrs. Harper. Daniel's jaw set like stone. Tomorrow he would go to her. Tomorrow, he would demand the truth. Because no one, hurt his little girl and walked away. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Daniel tightened the laces of his boots and set out down the street. He moved with the same controlled determination he once carried on missions overseas. Steady, unflinching, braced for whatever lay ahead. But this wasn't a war zone. This was his neighborhood. And the enemy wasn't a faceless soldier on foreign soil. It was someone who had been entrusted with his daughter's care. Mrs. Harper's house stood just a few blocks away. A modest brick home with a carefully trimmed garden. To any passerby, it looked peaceful, ordinary. But Daniel's chest burned with rage at the thought that behind those tidy walls, his child may have suffered. He knocked once, firmly. The door opened moments later, revealing Mrs. Harper, a woman in her late 50s, with graying hair tucked neatly in a bun. She smiled faintly when she saw him. "Well, Sergeant Carter," she said, her tone falsely sweet, "back home at last." Emily must be so happy. Her words struck him as wrong. Too smooth, too rehearsed. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "We need to talk." Oh, she hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course, come in." The living room smelled faintly of disinfectant. Toys were scattered in a basket by the wall. And children's drawings hung on the fridge in the kitchen. Everything was staged to look wholesome. But Daniel wasn't fooled. He remained standing, towering over her as she clasped her hands together politely. "Emily has marks on her arms," Daniel said flatly. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of thunder. "Red marks. Fresh ones. Can you explain that?" Mrs. Harper's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she forced another smile. "Children play rough, Sergeant. They fall, they scrape, they bruise. I assure you nothing out of the ordinary has happened." Daniel stepped closer. "Don't lie to me." The air between them tightened, heavy, suffocating. Mrs. Harper's smile faltered. She shifted uncomfortably. "Emily can be difficult sometimes. Headstrong. When she refuses to listen, I believe in discipline. Nothing harsh. Just a firm hand. Children need structure." Daniel's fists curled at his sides, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. His voice dropped to a growl. "You call leaving red welts on an 8-year-old's arms discipline?" 'Cause she flinched but tried to hold her composure. "I never meant to hurt her. She's a sweet girl. But, stop." Daniel's voice thundered through the room, louder than he intended. "You don't touch my daughter. Ever. Do you understand me?" Mrs. Harper's face paled. For the first time, her mask slipped, revealing a flicker of fear. "Sergeant Carter, Daniel cut her off, stepping forward until his presence filled the space. "Listen carefully. I've spent the last year fighting to protect strangers halfway across the world. And I'll be damned if I come home to find someone harming my little girl. You so much as look at her the wrong way again, and I will make sure you never go near another child as long as you live. Do you hear me?" The trembling in her hands betrayed her. She nodded quickly, words failing. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes burning. "She's not your responsibility anymore. Not today. Not ever again." He turned sharply and left the house, his boots striking the floor like war drums. The cool morning air hit his face as he stepped outside. But it did little to calm the fire raging inside him. For the first time since his return, Daniel felt the battle wasn't behind him. It was here. Protecting Emily wasn't just about confronting Mrs. Harper. It was about healing the wounds she carried, the fear that lingered in her silence. And as he walked back to the little white house with blue shutters, One vow echoed in his mind with the clarity of a soldier's mission. No one will ever hurt my daughter again. Daniel paused at the end of the walkway to his home, his chest heaving with a mixture of fury and grief. He had faced Mrs. Harper, but the confrontation hadn't erased the damage done. Red marks faded, but fear left deeper scars. His daughter's silence at the doorway yesterday. The way she clung to her sleeves. Those weren't things a quick apology or threat could fix. He needed Emily to believe in something stronger than her fear. She needed to believe in him. Inside, Emily sat cross-legged on the couch, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. She looked up when the door opened, her eyes wide and searching. For a moment, Daniel caught it, that flicker of doubt. As though she was still unsure if he truly was back for good. "Hey Angel," Daniel said softly, setting his duffel bag aside. "Mind if I sit with you?" She nodded, moving over slightly, though she still hugged the rabbit tightly. Daniel lowered himself onto the couch, the weight of his combat-worn body suddenly feeling heavier than ever. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. He didn't push. He had learned in the military that sometimes silence was a language of its own. Finally, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Daddy, are you leaving again?" The question shattered him. Daniel pulled her gently into his lap, cradling her like he used to when she was small. "No, sweetheart. Not now. Not for a long time." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm here. Right here." Emily buried her face against his chest, her words muffled. "I didn't want to tell you, I thought you'd be mad." His throat tightened. He tilted her chin up so she could see the raw truth in his eyes. "Mad? Never at you, baby girl. You could tell me anything in the world, and I'd still love you just as much. The only thing I'm mad about is that someone hurt you. That should never have happened." Poor tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she whispered, "I was scared." Daniel's arms tightened around her, his voice breaking. "I know. And I'm so sorry I wasn't here to protect you. But listen to me, Emily. From now on you will never be alone in this. You hear me? Daddy will always be here. No one, and I mean no one, will ever hurt you again." Her little hands gripped his uniform shirt, clutching it as if to anchor herself in his promise. For the first time since his return, she let out a shaky breath that sounded almost like relief. Over the next few days, Daniel made changes. He called the school, ensuring teachers kept a close watch. He spoke with his family, arranging that Emily would only be in their care when he couldn't be home. And quietly, he reported Mrs. Harper to the proper authorities, determined that no other child would endure what his daughter had. But the most important change wasn't paperwork or schedules, it was time. Every morning he walked Emily to school hand in hand. Every afternoon he was there at the gate to bring her home. At night, he read her stories until she fell asleep, her smile slowly returning piece by piece. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of gold and rose, Emily curled beside him on the porch swing. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Daddy." "Yes, Angel." She hesitated, then said softly, "I feel safe now." The words nearly undid him. He kissed her forehead, holding her close as the crickets began to sing. "That's all I ever wanted for you, sweetheart, safe, happy, loved. And that's my promise. For as long as I live." As Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, Daniel gazed out at the quiet street. The battles overseas were behind him, but this battle, this mission, was the most important of his life. And this time, victory meant watching his daughter's laughter return. Watching her scars heal, and knowing she would never doubt her father's love again.